So we've come together this evening. Oh, I feel like I'm giving a proper speech here. Because there's been a significant milestone reached, and we're going to celebrate this incredible journey of compassionate, mindful resilience that Karen has written, and it's got a very excellent evidence base that we're going to hear about this evening, and we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers. And I'm going to be hosting, so when you have spoken, I will take the hosting back and then introduce the next person. But let's do a practice. We're going to do a compassion practice to do with gratitude, just to help us land here in the present moment. So if you've just arrived, welcome. If you want to just choose your meditation posture, it's only for a few minutes. And if you want to close your eyes or soften your gaze, feeling your feet on the floor, if that's accessible to you, maybe sensing into the openness in the front of the body, and the heart center, and the breath, and just notice what it's like for you to be here with all these like-minded people who've all been on this journey, this amazing journey of compassionate mindful resilience. So just notice what comes into your field of awareness. Just allowing it to be there, whatever it is. And maybe bring to mind a sense of, firstly, what that mindful awareness that you have cultivated has brought to your life. Maybe focus on one thing in particular. Just to have a sense of the detail of that. What it feels like, maybe you can feel that in the body. Something that you feel really thankful for, and how it's really enhanced your life in some way. And that might be a small way, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but just really sensing into that, really noticing. And then bringing to mind the compassion element of your practice. Perhaps a way or a particular practice that really resonated with you, really empowers you to develop self-compassion. It might be an ongoing process, as all mindful and compassion meditation is. But something that's enabled you to practice that, to really bring that into your life. And you might want to place a hand on your heart, the heart center, somewhere else on the body you find really soothing and helps you connect with that compassion and feel if there's a sense of gratitude here for having that in your life. And then noticing and bringing to mind perhaps a practice that you feel has enabled you to really become more resilient, to become resilient in your life, to feel equipped and resourced, and able to perhaps lead into things in a way that you didn't before you had these practices and tools. And sense into any feelings of gratitude and thankfulness. Notice where you feel those in the body. That compassionate, mindful resilience. And mindfulness shining a light on our relationship with all aspects, living our lives one moment at a time, the power of being present, and that compassion that enables us to lean in to what we discover, what we've shone a light on, and bring some kindness and compassion to ourselves in the same way as we would other people. And enable us to change our perspective, perhaps be more open to what's going on for other people, and have a sense of what's here for you in terms of gratitude. Having those skills and developing that resilience in your life, and also supporting other people, as many of you will have and go on to do. That gift of being able to fill your own cup up and guide other people and invite other people to learn these skills. So noticing how you feel in the heart and the body and the mind in this moment. Taking your hands away, allowing it to float gently down into the lap. Noticing the breath, the feet on the floor. Gently opening your eyes, looking around. And I would like to invite Karen to talk to us all about the background and the development of the CMR programme.
Oh, thanks, Angie. It was really lovely. It's always a good way to start, isn't it? Doing a practice. So I just wanted to introduce Mandy as well before we begin, because Mandy is probably somebody you've spoken to and liaised with and chatted to along the way, but she has a face. And I thought it would be really lovely to have her here as well. So thank you for coming, Mandy.
That's all right.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about where this all originated, I sort of go back to my own practice, really, my own personal practice from my very early 20s, and how shorter practice has really supported me. Often through my yoga practice, and then moving more into pranayama practice, breath awareness, and yeah, just how I sort of started to really unfold it into my daily life. I did have longer practices, but the shorter practices were just as effective. And then as a nurse, and as I developed my skills and became a yoga teacher, as well as teaching short practices with people who are hypersensitized, yeah, really hypervigilant, had lots and lots of different trauma and pain and all sorts of medical and psychological problems, very complex. And teaching longer practices were just, they just weren't tenable for them. And so what I was doing was teaching much shorter practices. And when I say short, some of them were 20 seconds. That was all their capacity was at the time, was to be able to focus and to be able to, because it takes concentration at the beginning, doesn't it? And if you've got chronic fatigue, it's really hard to be able to pay attention for a long time as you're learning this skill in this way of being. So for 6.5 years or so, I worked teaching short practices, and I absolutely categorically knew that they were working. I got people out of being completely bedbound to riding their bicycles and back to work over the years, and many other things besides. So I knew the power of shorter practices, both personally and professionally, with really complex needs. And then when I set up, founded Mindfulness-UK in 2010, I didn't want to just go into, what should we call it, the more traditional kind of courses of the MBSR, MBCT. Of course, I could have done, and I did my training around those, but I wanted to continue with what I really knew in my heart of hearts worked as well, or maybe more so for some people. who maybe were neurodiverse perhaps, or had suffered with abuse or whatever. So alongside doing mindfulness-based stress reduction and then the teacher training, I also developed the Integrating Mindfulness and Compassion qualification. As many of you know, that's very, you teach flexibly, short practices, longer practices, just meeting the needs of whoever you're with in that moment. And then as time went on and I was teaching a lot more MBSRs, I mean, I was probably teaching about 12 to 15 a year MBSR courses in the early days, and recognizing that at the end of an 8-week program, it felt like there was a bit of conveyor belt going on, and I didn't want that to continue. And I also really acknowledged that the compassion side of it wasn't totally developed within the MBSR as I knew it. And so I actually developed a program, funnily enough, called the Mindfulness-Based Living Program, which is now obviously being taught. I mean, not my program, but that name is attributed to another organization, which is absolutely fine. And that was a shorter practice. It was 4 weeks, 2 hours a week, with shorter practices, which looked at core values and emotional intelligence and those sorts of areas over and above what the MBSR did. And then that kind of fizzled away after a few years as I got busier doing other things. And I started to, well, the pandemic came along. And right at the very beginning, having worked in health and social care for such a long time, and knowing, as I say, in the depths of my being that these shorter practices really worked, I set about taking that previous course, Mindfulness-Based Living program, thinking about what was to come. Obviously, I didn't predict it entirely, but I knew this was not a flash in the pan. And recreated it more with health and social care employees in mind. And from there, the Compassionate Mindful Resilience program evolved, and we've taught it in so many different organisations along the way. And as part of that, I've tweaked it and shaped it and worked with it a little bit more to really hone it and polish it to where it is now. And I feel really, really proud of where we've got to. And from those very early days, I also recognised that because I'd been chair of BAMBA and I still could see the traditional courses being, heralded really above all, I wanted to get some research evidence behind shorter practices. Now, I'm not the first to have short practices research, but not in the form of a program like this, which was repeated over and over again, and had years and years of development in it. So I reached out to friends and colleagues who I knew in universities, and I had such a groundswell of support, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And it was through that support and that belief in short practices and the effects on the brain, which Trudi is going to very kindly talk to us about in a little while, and seeing and hearing about the effects and the impacts on people who were suffering in a pandemic in lots of different ways. So we were working with people from public health who were in those meetings with the top health people deciding on what to do with the country and about lockdown and so on, and what to advise nationally and locally. So we were absolutely working with them and teaching them. We're working at Somerset County Council teaching social workers who were obviously put into a really difficult position in their work, and it was children's social services, and so we were really supporting them. Foster carers. We're working with Unison, and Unison is a massive union, and predominantly is health and social care, not entirely, some police, a lot of admin that support health and social care settings. So we did course after course after course with them. I've got a big long list, and so yeah, obviously the NHS, the NAPC, and then latterly moving further afield. And we've got Sean from HSBC who's going to say a few things as well. Thanks, Sean, about our work there too. So yeah, it's evolved, and the research has been such an important part of everything that has culminated through this recognition. There's no point just saying, yes, I know it works. I had to prove that it worked. And I've got to really hold my hands up, or hand on heart, and say, I didn't know it was going to work as well as it really does. You know, it was untested, this particular course, although there's like 25-30 years of expertise and knowledge, and that you know, unconscious competency has gone into it. Wasn't just a blank piece of paper where I thought, oh, I just try this and this and this. It was like, yeah, I really know that these elements work, and how it's cumulative. And of course it came out at about the same time. I developed it about the same time as my book was published, so it's aligned with the iceberg model, teaching mindfulness first and then moving into compassion, and along the way teaching all sorts of different skills to really build resilience. So the focus is on resilience building, and I think it's the bespoking aspect, how we can really bespoke it to different areas, that is so important, and really innovative. So for instance, I'm going to be teaching it for people who's experienced cancer. And so, yeah, that course is coming along next month. And of course, we've had it published, and Anna Wilson's going to talk about that. She's off camera at the moment, but she's going to talk about the research around with Kidney Care UK that enabled it to become published, and the bigger piece of research that we were all fingers and toes crossed of an RCT that's going to be done in the very near future. And so, yeah, I did want to just finish my piece, if I've got time, just to say some thank yous, because I do think it's an important, really important to acknowledge it's not just me who did this. I couldn't have done it without a massive amount of support and help. So with regard to the research, it was actually Michael Atkinson, who we know isn't a relative of mine. I know I always say that, although my supervisor is completely convinced he is, but he isn't. So Michael and Jessie from Newcastle University at the time, they supported the research around health and social care workers right from the get-go. Michael's now at Sunderland University. He's moved on, but he's very much an advocate of the CMR and is a CMR teacher. There's Professor Helen Noble, Anna Wilson, who's kindly giving her time tonight, and Stephanie Burton from Queen's University Belfast. And as I say, there are many more programmes that we're looking at for different types of people who are experiencing things in different ways. So carers and parents of children with heart disease and veterans and so on. Also Oulu and Helsinki University, we haven't got any published research, but they've been doing the teaching in pain clinics, and the Erica has been looking at the CMR compared to the MBSR with medical students, and they're really interesting outcomes. Yeah, thank you too to the international panel. So that was Sophie Sansom, who is now chair of BAMBA, and Jem Shackelford, who really supported my application. And Steph Unthank used to work for Mindfulness-UK and is the director of BAMBA. And Katharina, who's going to join us later from EAMBA and the IPA. And I've mentioned the organisations. And yeah, I want to say thank you to my publishers, actually. I'm in the process of writing the CMR workbook for worldwide release. And so, yeah, great that they have faith in me from my first book to be investing their time and energy into me writing a second book, which is specifically for the CMR programme, which is really exciting. To the trained teachers who are out there in the field doing this work, and yeah, really supporting me, and the feedback is just incredible in every single sector. So yeah, really delighted with that. As many of you know, there's an e-journal out now for the Compassionate Mind for Resilience. So the poets from the e-journal, Helen, thank you very much, Eleanor, Jerome, Lena, Chika, Angie, and Joe Corrick. and very much to my wonderful team, which is way beyond these people sitting here. And so along the way, lots of people have invested time and energy from my team into the CMR, with Kate teaching quite a lot in public health, Kate Elliott, Chika most recently, Claire, Lindsay, Ellie, Mandy, not teaching it, I know, but really supporting everything that we do. Bindi, who really supports Mindfulness UK, Angie, of course, who I've got more to say about later, Dave, who has been a saint and chopped and changed with all my ideas and does all the website and the things. Neil, my husband, Sam from Australia, who developed many e-courses, but the CMR, Joel, and many more besides. So yeah, much gratitude to everybody who supports everything that we do. So yeah, thank you. I'll stop talking now, Angie.
Oh, well, thank you to Karen. And if you have a glass of something, like to raise a toast to Karen for having the vision and the drive and the energy. So cheers and well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. It's a strange online celebration, isn't it? So thank you, and we're going to hand over to Dr. Trudi Edginton. She's going to talk about the effects of shorter practices, compassion, gratitude on the brain, and how it affects resilience building. And Trudi is from City University, London.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Karen. I'm just going to make sure that you can all see my slides. How is that for everybody? Can you see my slides? Can you hear me? Sorry, because I can only see the slides.
Yes, we can see them, Trudi.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. I'm hoping it's the full screen, but okay, I'm just going to make a start. So thank you ever so much for the very kind invitation to come and speak to you today about the neuroscience of these shorter mindfulness and compassion practices. I've been working with Karen and Angie and her team for a while, and also contributed to Karen's book on the chapter of neuroscience, which supported her iceberg model, which is absolutely fantastic and a great way of conceptualizing all of the different elements and how there's a real theoretical and neuroscientific basis for everything that is actually sort of fundamental to mindfulness and compassion. So just a very quick intro in terms of who I am. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also a reader in cognitive neuroscience, hence that interest in neuroscience. But I started off my professional career as a nurse, and obviously mindfulness, very much like Karen, was a very core part in my own practice, but also in working with different people who have not just physical sort of health difficulties, but also mental health difficulties, and really thinking about how to actually reduce distress and stress. And following my PhD and psychology training, I was also a neuropsychologist at Adam Brooks Hospital, working in a traumatic brain injury clinic, and also at Chelsea and Westminster Memory Clinic, working with people with dementia, hydrocephalus and spina bifida. And I'm telling you that because this really sort of also was a foundation for my interest in having to modify the mindfulness and also bring in compassion to working with people who have sort of memory and executive function difficulties, and also the fatigue that Karen spoke about. And just realizing that, even though I really supported the traditional sort of MBSR program, it was very difficult in practice, in clinical practice, working with people who were experiencing difficulties with memory and executive function. And in terms of my interest in the brain, this is one of my favorite images of the brain, because you can see those outer layers of the brain, but also those subcortical structures that are very key to what is actually happening when we're thinking about sort of thinking of stress reduction and making those changes and differences in the brain when we're practicing mindfulness and compassion. And you'll be able to see two structures there on the right hemisphere of the brain, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala is the round, sort of almond shaped, and the hippocampus almost looks like a seahorse, which is why and how it got its name. And you can see the layers of the outer cortex and the prefrontal cortex, which are going to be the main parts of the brain that are sort of implicated when we're thinking about stress and also when we're thinking about mindfulness and compassion. And within all of these different structures, there's a very highly specialized network of neurons and synapses that are releasing a number of different chemicals, neurotransmitters, neurohormones, that really give rise to the way that we think, that we feel, and the way that we behave. And again, there's some extraordinary evidence to show that even the way that these particular neurotransmitters are modulated give rise to the way that we feel in our bodies and actually help us to regulate our emotion and develop that resilience that we're also hoping to cultivate. So I think all of us know about stress, and I think we all know that at the moment we are living through a remarkable phase in sort of global history and sort of thinking about the way that stress is actually impacting all of us. We've all lived through the pandemic, and there's a huge amount of uncertainty and things that we are affecting all of us. And I think there is that real sense that, you know, we know that stress is something that is difficult for all of us to sometimes manage, but we do need stress, and there is an optimal level of stress which actually helps us to motivate us into action. And we all have a very different sort of optimum level. Some people like to be very organized and get everything done weeks in advance, and others like me, very last minute. And that's where my optimum level of stress is. However, that optimal level of stress is great when it's in that sort of acute stage. So if something's coming up, like a talk, we need to have that level of stress and arousal so that we can do a good job. But if we have long-term stress, chronic stress, it becomes very difficult then in terms of what's actually happening biologically, but also what's actually happening to our brains. And it also leads to cognitive overload and a whole range of physical problems and sort of stress signatures. We all have our own individual stress signature that is going to be activated when there is a stress response. And again, this really just allows us to think about the acute and the chronic response to stress. That sympathetic nervous system that releases adrenaline, which is our physiological response in acute stress. We know that that can be arousal, it can be because of a threat. But when we have that chronic stress, we're releasing different hormones. We're releasing cortisol, we're activating different parts of the brain, particularly the axis which we refer to as the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this particular sort of network involves different parts of the brain, but it also involves different neurotransmitters and hormones, and in particular cortisol. Now, when we think about cortisol and that HPA axis, you can see that once, in essence, this is really our link between our mind, our body, but also our external environment. When these stresses are actually very present and chronic, it's actually going to impact these different areas within our brains. And once we've actually released that cortisol, what we then find is that we're going to be having cortisol dysregulation that then affects those key anatomical structures in the brain that I mentioned at the very beginning, the amygdala and the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. Now, this happens on the left and the right. So we have two amygdalae and we also have two hippocampi, and they're very sensitive to emotion and they're very sensitive to our experience, our everyday sensory and emotional and memory experiences. So it's not a surprise that they're going to be impacted by stress and also make changes. And what we see is if the amygdala is impacted by stress, it becomes much more hypersensitive. However, if the hippocampi become impacted by chronic stress, they start to lose neuronal connections and synapses, and they lose volume. And you actually see these changes happening in the brain in real time. And when we think about that cortisol dysregulation, it's not just always an increase, it can be sometimes a decrease, which is why it's much better to talk about the dysregulation. It's actually a very sophisticated system, and it sort of takes a place over a long period of time. And it, as I mentioned, it gives us that link between the environment, the mind, and the body, and gives rise to those stress signatures, which are our physical manifestations of stress. And we all have different sort of stress signatures. For some people, it's tension in the neck, or it's backache, or stomach problems. It can also start to affect our immunity and obviously give rise to insomnia. Always a good time for us to start ruminating is just when we need to go off to sleep. And for any of you that are really interested in that physical manifestation of stress, I can't recommend highly enough the book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, because it really does highlight sort of how we respond in terms of having the cognitive processes that as humans we also bring to the table when we're appraising stress. And not only is it our appraisal of stress, it's also that ability that we have as humans where we have mental time travel. We can go to the past, we can go to the future, but rarely are we actually quite grounded in the actual present moment. And it's this that really needs to be sort of addressed with not just mindfulness in order to be able to bring us back into the present moment, but also compassion, so that when we know that the way that we respond to stress is part of our evolutionary development, and we have these new frontal executive processes that are also competing with an older region in terms of threat and reward, and some of that magnet that we have for negativity, but also the fact that it's also quite hard for us to also allow the positivity to penetrate. So knowing these biases that we have in terms of our brain function allows us to then think about ways of actually bringing compassion and mindfulness into the ability to realize not necessarily our fault as humans, but it is our responsibility to be able to understand and then make changes where we can. And if we think about compassion, it really does mean to sort of suffer with, and to be able to have awareness of pain, and to be able to not avoid and actually going towards that pain, which is actually quite difficult when we think about how people think about compassion or even self-compassion, that quite often there's a sort of a myth or a lack of understanding about the strength of self-compassion and the strength of compassion for others. And it really, when we combine that with our common humanity and our ability to have that non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, becomes really powerful. It's very gentle, but it's also very powerful. And it also allows us then to come away from that serotonin release and that cortisol release that we find when we're sort of faced with a threat. So when we are actually feeling angry or anxious, we're releasing serotonin and cortisol. And sometimes our reaction to that can either be quite driven or excited or reward-based, where we start releasing dopamine. But actually what we want to be able to achieve is an affiliative focused connection where we're soothing ourselves, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, releasing oxytocin, and also releasing GABA. And when we do that, then we start seeing these changes in the brain. We get increased cortical thickness. In terms of EEG measures, we get synchrony across the hemispheres. That hippocampi starts to be activated and we get greater volume. And we also get greater brain connectivity when we're being compassionate and mindful. And we get that decreased activation of the amygdala. So we're not as sensitive to emotional pressure and change. And we can see the parts of the brain that are actually activated when this happens. The insula is affected when we have greater body awareness, so that we can actually feel those physical manifestations, become aware of that. The anterior cingulate cortex is activated, allowing us to regulate our attention and also to regulate that rumination that is that sort of secondary layer of actually thinking and processing. And different areas across the whole of the brain are going to be involved in emotion regulation and that resilience that we need. And then also a whole host of other regions that are also affected when we want to increase our perspective taking, that sense of empathy for others and ourselves, and that self-referential processing. And I want to come to the end and sort of finish in terms of thinking about, even though we've had this traditional sort of element of different mindfulness courses where we're actually looking at sort of longer practices, by developing these shorter practices, and this is research that we did in 2016, about 10 years ago actually, looking at different individual practices within mindfulness and compassion groups. And what you can actually see is that even with just a 5-minute practice, we were getting changes in heart rate variability, which is a very good measure of resilience, because we want the heart rate to rise when we need it to, but we also then want it to resolve when the actual stress is finished. So having that heart rate variability is a very good measure of stress and resilience. And what we also found is when we use these short practices, not only do you have that synchrony within the body and also across the hemispheres of the brain, but also with other colleagues that are sharing those practices. So you get the synchrony within the group and with the instructor, which again, for me, is so powerful and so wonderful in terms of knowing that we feel that in a group, but to actually have the evidence for that, again, is really supportive. So again, just coming to the end of not only just short practices, but shorter talks, thinking about how important the modifications of mindfulness and compassion are, because it means that we are reaching out and making sure that mindfulness and compassion is accessible for different types of people across the lifespan, working with older adults, people who are really sensitive to those physical, cognitive, and sensory emotional difficulties. And as Karen mentioned, also for neurodivergent individuals, those shorter practices are much more engaging and really sort of reaching out to people who might not necessarily have thought about mindfulness and compassion. So together, when we think about this, we were really looking at a collection of different practices that allow us to improve awareness of the present moment, which comes with that suffering sometimes and difficulty. It means that we can modify for the people that we're working with and sort of share those measurable physiological changes and those measurable effects on the brain. And we know that both mindfulness and compassion, particularly when used together, can reduce stress, pain, and anxiety and depression, but also improve our well-being, our emotional regulation, and our resilience. So thank you all for your attention, and I'm going to see if I can stop sharing now. And happy to take any questions at any point, maybe now or later. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Trudi. It'd be good to, we've got some little bit of space for questions at the end. Possibly, thank you so much for that. It's always a pleasure to hear you talk, so informative and just amazing. Again, even though I've heard about the evidence base, it's just absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? Blows your mind. So thank you. And I'd like to introduce Sean Tolram next, and he's going to give us an overview of the impact on the CMR for HSBC employees. So over to you, Sean, and you've got until 7:50, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Sean. I'm the head of mindfulness at HSBC. HSBC is a global bank with 230,000 employees across 70 different countries. And it's my job to create the conditions where people can be at their best. And mindfulness is the most effective tool that I have to do that. Before I was in this role, I was in charge of HSBC's websites, and I introduced mindfulness to help people cope in that tough environment. And the side effect that I didn't expect was that it actually improved their performance. That wasn't what I was going for, but we were able to measure a reduction in errors going live on the websites. So there was a number of benefits we saw. And then because of those results, I was then asked to come into this new role, which was to head up the mindfulness team. So not a common role, not a role that you hear much about in other companies. And what we've done is we've trained mindfulness champions globally across the bank. So we've got about 250 mindfulness champions. We train them according to the BAMBA guidelines using the MBI TAP criteria. So pretty rigorous training. We observe them as well. But one thing that's really important is that these champions are volunteers and they're giving up their time to support their colleagues. So we want ways to reward them, to give them training, to give them education, so they can continue to develop themselves. And we were offering them the MBSR and various other longer courses. And they were saying no, that they don't want to do it, that they couldn't do it. Even though it was being funded, they didn't have to pay for it. They just said it wasn't accessible for them because they could not predict what they would be doing in 5-6 weeks' time. Their managers were very unlikely to sign off an 8-week course. So in the corporate world, in that environment that they were in, it just wasn't realistic. So I've been looking for a while for something that was shorter, more accessible, that would at least give them something, give them a place to start. And that's when I discovered the CMR and gave Karen a call. So we ran a pilot with 10 of our mindfulness champions, and it recently finished. And the feedback on it was amazing, actually. A few of them said it was the best course that they'd ever done. And a lot of them said that it was more accessible than anything that they'd experienced. It was easier for them to digest the information. It was easier for them to remember what was in the course and then go out and change habits and change behaviors. And I've faced a lot of criticism. You know, people have said to me, oh, you're making things shorter, you're diluting the effectiveness of mindfulness. But actually, what we've done here is we've met people where they are, because if we didn't do this, then they would do nothing. So we've given them something, we've given them a place to start, and it went down really well. So as a result, we're now looking to continue running the CMR at HSBC and continue putting more mindfulness champions through it, and perhaps offering it to other groups at the bank. And what we're noticing is that when we get people introduced to those shorter practices, those shorter sessions, a lot of them over time, they then start to look into the longer versions. But if we hit them with the longer versions from day one, it's really hard for them to get involved with that. And I often think about it in terms of going from not exercising to trying to run a 5K. If you just get up one morning, you try to run the full 5K, you'll probably pull a muscle. So you build up slowly. And that's the way that we're seeing it at HSBC. And the CMR is the ideal way to help people to build up slowly. And then if they decide, yeah, there's something in this for me, they can then go off and they can explore other things that they want to do. So incredibly effective course. I was so pleased with it. I knew it would go down well, but I didn't expect the feedback to be so overly positive. So yeah, well done, Karen, for coming in, for being flexible, because HSBC isn't the easiest company to work with. But yeah, well done. And I look forward to running it again. And that was all I wanted to say, Karen, so I can hand back to you.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Sean. It was an absolute pleasure as well. So yeah, look forward to many more. Over to Angie.
Thank you, Sean. So short and sweet, but very inspiring and so interesting, isn't it? How about the accessibility of this course, which is where you were coming from in the first place. Brilliant. So yeah, thank you. I'd like to introduce Anna Wilson, who's from Queen's University, Belfast. She's going to talk about the research that Karen referred to before, so the qualitative and the quantitative research outcomes, and yeah, anything additional. Thank you, Anna.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this evening's celebrations. Can I just check you can see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can. Thanks, Anna. Yeah.
Brilliant. So yes, I'm just really briefly going to talk to you about the research project that I was involved in, which was exploring how accessible and feasible the Compassionate Mindful Resilience Programme was for people living with kidney disease. And I'll also mention a little bit of the other research that's going on within our school at Queen's University as well. So just to give you a very brief background to the study, so people living with kidney disease and transplant can experience very challenging social and emotional symptoms, such as increased anxiety and depression, and that can lead to poor quality of life. They do have limited access to specialist psychological or social support, particularly in renal units. There is a lack of adequate psychosocial care across units in the UK. And at the time we were undertaking our study, there was additional COVID risk factors due to these patients' clinically vulnerable status and restrictions such as such as shielding, which were really negatively affecting their mental health and well-being. So this study really was spearheaded by Professor Helen Noble, who Karen mentioned previously. Helen is a trained mindfulness teacher and is trained in the delivery of the CMR. So we recruited 75 participants to the study with our partners Kidney Care UK, who funded the study. And these participants were to be 18 years or over, living in the UK and living with stage 4 or 5 kidney disease or had a kidney transplant. So we did do some preliminary work, and that was really to adapt the assessment process for the CMR and the programme delivery, and we had an expert advisory group to advise on that. All the participants who took part were assessed by their mindfulness teacher and to ensure the CMR was appropriate for them. And the participants were allocated to 8 groups between June and October 2022 to complete the 4-week session. We also asked our participants to complete questionnaires at baseline, on completion of the programme, and also at 3 months post-completion. So I'll just share a little bit about the demographics of the participants that we had taking part. So we were very pleased to see we had almost a third of our participants were male, which was fantastic. And I think Karen always said that it was the word of resilience in there really appealed to men. They might not have come forward to take part if that word wasn't in it. As you can see, we had a really wide range of ages. We had people from in their 20s to in their 70s take part, which was fantastic as well. And the majority of our participants were post-transplant, some in stage 4 and about a quarter in stage 5. You can see there's just the different ethnicities of our participants. Most were from sort of the white ethnic background, but we had quite a lot of other ethnicities as well. And then that little map just shows the spread of participants who took place. And this was possible because of the online delivery. So we were so delighted to see, you know, all the way up in the Highlands of Scotland, all the way to the west coast of Ireland, down to the very south coast of England. So it was brilliant to bring together people from all across the UK. So I'm just going to share the changes in our outcome measures that we observed. So we measured anxiety, depression, self-compassion, mindfulness, mental well-being, and resilience. And we were delighted to find that we found statistically significant changes across every single one of those outcome measures with our participants that took place or that took part from the pre CMR to post, and then again at 3 months post. So that was just a really amazing positive outcome of taking part in the CMR. I would just like to share some of the quotations from the participants who took part in our study now, because I think these are really meaningful and hopefully you'll feel the same. So the first one, I think that just the general feeling of well-being when you're doing the breathing and deep into one of the mindfulness practices, how calm and relaxing that feels and how it helps to steady everything, because it feels so good. It makes you want to carry on learning about it and to be able to do it the best that you can. Somebody said it was an opportunity to help me become at peace with myself and with my thoughts. Somebody else said, I really learned and understand what the statement means to be kind to yourself. I grew to actually learn to love myself more. I really learned how to embrace me, and I think the compassion part was probably the best bit of it for me. Be kind to yourself, and be aware. The practices, I have been doing ones that I find beneficial. The one that I keep going back to is the body scan, because with the anxiety, I find it's either in my chest, with tight chest or fast beating heart, or in my stomach, it goes into knots. And that helps me calm the physical sensations of that down. And then because of that, then mentally I am calmer as well. And I think that really reflects what Trudi just said in her previous presentation, those physical effects of stress and how the CMR can help to manage those. And then the final little quotation there. I think the course gave permission to people to feel compassion for themselves, to recognize that what they have is real. This pain is real. And therefore you have permission to seek help or ask for help, to learn more and, give yourself time. So hopefully that just sort of shares with you some of the really positive impact that the CMR program had on the participants that took part in our study. So just to share a bit of the impact from this, we found that the CMR program was accessible and feasible to deliver in a group setting online to people with kidney disease. We observed positive changes in their outcome measures. We found that it had the potential to expand the patient support services such as counselling that were currently being provided by Kidney Care UK. And the organisation also assisted as one of our study participants to undertake mindfulness teacher training, and also for the Kidney Care UK counsellors to have undertaken mindfulness training as well to integrate that into their counselling service, which is just fantastic. These are the 3 publications that came out of a result of our study. So we had the Cosmic Study Protocol was shared. In the middle there we have the feasibility and acceptability findings, which is the stats and the qualitative findings together. And finally, a more qualitative piece about people's experiences of taking part in the study. So we're delighted that these were all published, and we've had quite a few citations on these publications already, which is really good to see. So next steps, as Karen mentioned earlier, we are in the process of trying to secure funding for a randomized control trial for the CMR. Obviously, our quantitative findings were really positive, and that gives us a really good basis to go ahead and hopefully be able to undertake a randomized control trial. And we're just waiting for the sort of the final piece of the funding puzzle to drop into place at the minute. And just some of the other studies that are taking place across Queen's University within our school. There's the Mercury study, which is a pilot study led by our colleague, Dr. Claire McVeigh, and pilot study to explore the CMR with people living with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And also Stephanie Burton is exploring the use of the CMR to support the mental health of nursing students as part of her PhD project. So really that's the end of my presentation. Thank you again so much for inviting me to come this evening and share the results of the study.
Oh, so wonderful. Thank you, Anna. There's a couple of things in there I didn't know myself. So really wonderful. And thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and a joy to have gone down this research path with you all, a fabulous team at Queen's University Belfast, and maybe work together for many more years to come. So yeah, thank you so much. I really have appreciated you along the way.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Anna, and I'm wishing you all the best with that last piece of the funding puzzle. Yeah, I've got everything crossed. So thank you, and welcome to Katharina from EAMBA, the European Association of Mindfulness-Based Approaches. I'm going to talk about the impact of acknowledging shorter courses with shorter practices. Over to you. Thank you.
So good evening. I'm very happy to have had the chance to already listen in. I was a bit late, but now I'm here. And we were very honored that Karen came online with the EAMBA Exchange community on the 30th of January this year, when you shared a lot of things, Karen. And in preparation of this evening, I looked up my notes. And I had told Teresa that I would really love to be here because I was so impressed by your program and by your presentation. And so I wondered, what were the details of why I was so impressed? So I will talk as a person, as Katharina, but I will also give a few points of EAMBA. I'm not an EAMBA board member anymore, but I'm still as founder of the association in Belgium. The association in Belgium is an EAMBA member. So from my previous experience in EAMBA, I would like to emphasize the importance of innovation, but innovation based on integrity. And the CMR is for me a wonderful example that innovation based on integrity brings so much value to populations, and groups of people who would otherwise not have the possibility to access these practices. mindfulness and compassion practices. So the first thing that was important to me in my role in Ayamba was the accessibility that you made possible, and that especially you made it possible for time-poor workers. I work with time-poor people who work in companies, and I was very familiar with this, that they didn't have the patience for longer practice. But what I remember from what you said, what you have practices between 10 seconds and 10 minutes. That is really even shorter than I was used to. So 10 seconds, I think I never did offer the 10-second practice. It was at least 30 seconds. So you're the champion of the shortness. But I truly believe that some of the things that we would have loved to learn when we were younger, we need to learn as adults. And when I'm talking about time-poor people, these are skills: mindful, compassionate. Those are skills that might be taught if you're religious, or if you come from a family that is deeply ingrained in altruistic values, but it is seldom also self-compassion. And here we have a program that teaches all that. What also struck me in my role in Ayamba, looking at innovation based on integrity, was the enormous variety of delivery. I really had taken a very elaborate note on that you deliver through WhatsApp, you deliver through Zoom, you deliver in person. You like open all the drawers, all the possibilities to make it possible that someone can and is able to participate. So for me, this was really, really wonderful. And very often in Ayamba, we have discussed whether this is helpful. Well, all your research is proving that it is helpful and that people can learn by having those different possibilities, having it delivered in different modes. Another thing that struck me, of course, the antidote to isolation in a world that is where the things are thrown at us and where things are increasing with the technology that we are bombarded with, and that also we want, and then we attract, we become magnets for that. But at the same time, we need an antidote. And having an antidote that in 10 seconds can bring you back and bring a short, like a green shower. Well, wonderful. No other words for that. One more note that I took was the practicality. And then especially what I also experience as Katharina when I offer my practices to time-poor people. I work with lawyers, entrepreneurs, and people in companies that are very time pressured, like media companies or people who work in finance, is that you tuned your program to the language of the people. Especially with very often in mindfulness, we say that there is no objective towards, there's no achievement, and it's a fine line. But at the same time, when you work in situations where people are time pressured or time poor, people need a reason to make time for this. And the work, you will be more productive, you will be more concentrated, your brain will be less foggy. All these aspects that you bring into your explanation, that is so important, because in those situations, people are outcome oriented. they will, and they are checked for performance. So if we don't give them something to have a reason in performance and in outcome, not good, not good. So what I remember from your presentation is that you said that in essence, you wanted to go to that very specific population in healthcare and in nursing, and people who work with people who have been traumatized and have experienced abuse, but then you transferred because so many other people asked you for it. I mean, when Sean was talking, I thought, well, how did this program migrate? Congratulations on that. And the intelligence with which you talked, Sean, about that you meet the people where they are. Well, for ages, we have asked people to come to the studio and then sit in our space. Well, we need to go out and meet them where they are, and then have their language, understand their language, and bring it to what they need. Because going to meet the people where they are is also giving them what they need. So these were things that I found in my notes. I mingled a bit my own experience and the Eyamba reason for this. You also had your program evaluated by the International Panel for the Acknowledgement Fund of MBPs, which is very important. I've been an ambassador for that forever, because I think that programs who are innovative, they need visibility. They need that they're advertised. They need to be showcased, and that there is a university-based evaluation that will say, this program is valuable. And in IPA, the criteria are that it is safe, that it is effective, and that it is innovative. And innovative means it does not, it's not number 13 of programs that have already been out there. It is safe in the way that it won't harm, and it is effective because someone who was not the teacher has looked at the outcome. So it's very easy criteria, but it's quite difficult to meet them. And then I was curious if maybe at the end we have time. You mentioned 9 points that were next, and 2 of them were especially interesting for me, where you said that you wanted GP surgeons and the NHS to be more widely interested and applying the program, to use it. And the other was to integrate it in intervention training programs. So I was interested, but if we don't have time for that, maybe once we can have a call of that. And then the last thing I wanted to acknowledge and honor you for, Karen, is I remembered from your presentation that you mortgaged your house to ensure that you could finance your mission. And I think that is truly the most entrepreneurial proof of everything. Put your money where your mouth is. So congratulations. You did a wonderful job, and you didn't shy away from putting your own money into it. Thank you so much for having done this. And if I can do more to showcase your program, I would love to. For example, in the Mindfulness World community, I would love to invite you there so you can showcase it to teachers of all continents. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you so much. I'm really welling up. Thank you so much. I'm very red. I really appreciate it so much of what you say. And yeah, I do feel really proud of how I've done it, because it didn't just arrive. It was really hard graft, but I really have such a passion for it from a very deep place. And Thank you so much. A very deep bow to you for acknowledging that. Bless you.
With pleasure.
Thank you, Katharina. I'm so happy that you were able to come and talk and make space for that. And we're very, very grateful. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Mary Walker, who I've not actually met before. So it's really lovely to meet you and see your face in person, Mary. And I believe you're going to talk about the impact and potency of the programme. And you're a mindfulness teacher and also a health coach.
Yeah.
Do you add anything else? Thank you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, isn't it? But I am so happy to have a few minutes now to contribute to celebrating Karen, the Mindfulness UK team, the research that has meant that the CMR is now sitting alongside the MBSR and the MBCT. Is absolutely amazing. And I've just actually come off a group supervisor session with 40 of my health coach students. And right at the end, one of them said, "Oh, by the way, Mary, I just want to really thank you so much for the course I was on with you in March, because it supported me through a major operation I've just been through and how I am now healing with compassion and kindness. And I've been dreading this operation for months. So even now I'm getting feedback from the last course I did in March. And I did my training in 2022 with Kate alongside you, Jane. Seems ages ago now. And I've since run the program 7 times, and I have the health coach students are usually my participants. So I have at least 10 in each. So I've done it 7 times with 10. My next one is in October. It's already fully booked and there's a waiting list. And also on the back of the success of this course, I have a group of participants who now want to do the MBSR and train to be teachers. And that's starting in June, and that is also fully booked. And it's so clear that this course has been lovingly and carefully crafted. And I have spoken to Karen, and I know it took almost 6 years. And I absolutely love this course. And the potency, I believe, comes from the layer upon layer of positivity from the practices and then from the home practice. And because they're only 10 minutes long, they're doable. There's no excuse. People actually do them. And I've recorded every meditation, and on my website, I have a meditation room with each of the practices recorded. So they get a link to that, and there's no excuses to do the practice. And I love this course so much that, I want to bring it in as a CPD of some sort to the Health Coach Academy where I work. And I've told the core team about it, and maybe we'll have a retreat for the core team. But our students are doctors, nurses, dietitians, all sorts of people from the healthcare, and also, people who just want to change career. The feedback, I could have spent the next 2 hours talking through all the feedback, because they don't get their certificate unless they give me feedback. And I've just happily been reading through them, and I just love the feedback. The vast majority are happy with the length and wouldn't change a thing. Almost everyone. I'm happy with the length. I wouldn't change a thing. The overriding feedback is this has been life-changing. One of them said, "This has quite literally changed my perspective on life. When I joined, the only positive thing I could name was stroking my dog." She said that she was in a really bad space. She now has a positivity journal filled with all the savoured moments that she has during the day. So people are calmer, lighter, more prepared to handle stress and anxiety. The list goes on. And I put an extra session in so that an hour, a sort of 5th session. So let's see how you're getting on. And also the very first group I ran, that has gone on, and I've been seeing them for 2 years, and they are still seeing the benefits of this course. They, in the feedback, they name specifically the practices that they love and they're engaged with, and which ones work for them. So that it's really, they're able to put together their toolkit, or whatever you want to call it. And one of the most amazing feedback I got was, this has helped me more than months of CBT. So it's a very, very powerful course, and I love it. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to say something to you, Karen, and to the team. And yeah, so.
Thanks, Mary. Oh, it's always such a pleasure to hear you talk. We've known each other a very long time, haven't we? But it's just, yeah, thank you for that feedback. It's sometimes very strange. You put something out there and it feels like it just sort of is disappearing, and it's just really wonderful to close the circle and have it come back and to hear all the good that it's doing. So much gratitude to you, Mary, for doing the teaching and for taking the time to talk. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over to Karen, who's going to take us through, treat us to one of the practices that she has written that wasn't in the original CMR programme, but it's ongoing, it's still being developed. Karen's still putting all that love and positivity into it, so it's going to continue to be the best programme it can possibly be. And so I'll hand over to you for that practice, if that's okay. You want to go all right?
Yeah, just about. Oh yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, I'm going to do the heart practice, and we're just going to take about 5 minutes over this and then have an opportunity to ask some questions. So yeah, let's find our posture, whatever that might be for you this evening. If it's possible, with your feet on the floor, but however you feel comfortable and at ease. So HEART is an acronym, and we start once we feel grounded, stable, to bring the attention to the heart. And when I talk about the heart, I really mean the heart center, that place in the middle of the chest, which is equally between the left and the right, the front and the back, about the size of a tennis ball. And you've been doing a lot of listening today, and you might be up in your head and just allowing an opportunity to transition down to this heart center. Meditating from here with awareness. Being here together just as we are is enough. You are enough. This moment is enough, just as we are. Noticing what that feels like. To know that this is enough. Good enough for now, right now. Not only is this moment good enough, but you are good enough. Aware of how this feels, this sense of being enough in this moment, how it feels not only in the heart, but also in the body, in the mind. Having an awareness of the resonance of enoughness. And perhaps offering yourself some reassurance. And place your hand on your heart or your belly or somewhere else. You might want to give it a little tap on around your heart center. Maybe just give yourself a hug or stroke your arm or your face or something else, but allowing yourself this time to offer a sense of it's okay. This being enough right here in this moment. It's all fine. And trusting in this process of meditation, of offering us time, of space, of kindness, of reassurance. Trusting that as we do this over and over, we have a capacity to change our relationship to ourselves, change our brains, our stress responses, our relationships, our sense of our place in the world, rejoicing in life. And knowing over time it does lead to transformation. It certainly has for me, and I know it has for so many other people. So sensing into that potential. Connecting with the now, connecting with your heart, trusting the process, offering reassurance throughout. Just noticing how that feels. As we come to the end of this very brief practice, maybe bringing your hand, if it's been on your body somewhere, down to your lap. Having a pause, just noticing your experience now and how perhaps there's been a shift, a change. It might be subtle. And on your next out breath, just gently bringing this practice to a close in whichever way feels supportive for you. It might be a stretch, a hug, a drink or something, whatever you need. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Karen. That's a lovely practice to finish on. It would be lovely, maybe if you could answer maybe a question that Katharina had, if you can remember what they are. And it would also be lovely, we've got a little bit of time, maybe if one or two people want to say, you know, what they're doing with the CMR as well, an opportunity to share. We've only got about 8 minutes left.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know how
Okay.
in-depth that answer is going to be, Karen. So.
Yeah, so I think a question was around supporting employees within GP surgeries. Was that? Yeah. So yeah, I talked to you in January, and we're actually just coming to the end of a project where we did a pilot, and I'm coming to the end of cohort number 7 now with the National Association of Primary Care, working in GP surgeries in North London. So a lot of the people who work there are administrative staff, and they sometimes fall through the cracks of being supported, their mental health and their well-being. So many of the people who've been on those cohorts are more of the supportive people within the surgeries who are pivotal, like Mandy is pivotal to Mindfulness UK, and really acknowledging the role that they play. And knowing that they are on the front line of frontline workers. So in North London, you know, they don't know who's going to come through the door, and it can be really traumatic what they experience. But added to which, there are doctors who've been on the course, practice managers, other healthcare professionals as well. And part of the beauty is they're all learning it together. They work together and they're learning these skills together. And yeah, how wonderful it is to have that common language and that the skills and tools that we've talked about. So yeah, it's ongoing, and I'd love to do that some more. So yeah, I have yet to write a report, and we'll see what happens then. Oh, thank you very much, Lila. So yeah, that's in answer to one of your questions, Katharina, and yeah, it's a plan in process, I do hope. Yeah. So yeah, just wondering if anybody else had any questions they'd like to ask about anything. It's an opportunity in the next few minutes, or to share the work that you're doing. It'd be really lovely, yeah, to hear from you where you're working or proposing to work. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wonder, Hilary, if you'd like, I don't want to pick on you, but do you feel that you, and I am going to, if you'd like to share anything just very briefly, or if you're not up to it, that's absolutely fine too.
Well, just, can you hear me?
Yes, we can,
Yeah,
Hilary.
hi. Yeah, so perhaps just along with Anna Wilson, I was part of the research that she was on, and I think I was one of the very first cohorts, and yeah, it was just so amazing. It had such an impact on me, you know, that I literally kind of just walked around every day thinking, how am I feeling? Asking myself all these different questions about how I felt. And, you know, if I was a little bit moody, you know, I could then do a little short meditation, stop and change my persona, change how I felt. And, you know, just learning those little things would just, it was just amazing, you know. So every time, you know, we were asked for any help to do with the study, I was always just willing to just, you know, provide some information, just support her and support the project. You know, at that time, I didn't know you, Karen. I didn't, you know, and then, you know, a couple of months later, you know, I'm contacting Mindfulness UK because I want to become a teacher. I want to do this course, you know. So yeah, that it's just amazing. And just listening to your journey and how much effort that you've put into it, you know, and the fact that we are, you know, your very first teachers, it's just wonderful, you know. And for me, that's part of a legacy. So I'm so glad to be part of your legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. And I know you're hiding your light under a bushel and that you do some amazing work. And yeah, really appreciate you for that too. But yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we've just got time for maybe one more question, or just a reflection, or anything else. Yes, indeed, Katharina. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'd just like to take the opportunity to raise a glass if you've got a drink of something or anything, or just an imaginary drink if you haven't, and just to raise a glass once more to say congratulations. Thank you, Karen, for your vision and your hard work, and to everybody who's been involved and all that's been achieved. And yes, may it grow legs and continue, and arms and whatever, tentacles, and those ripples of mindfulness keep going, mindfulness and compassion and resilience. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, emojis.
Thank you. And thank you to Angie, my right-hand woman, who's been there with me the whole way through, supporting me through thick and thin. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate each and every one of you, particularly well, the teachers, for those of you who have faith in me, and for those of you who've spoken tonight so enthusiastically, and yeah, I feel so supported by you all, and yeah, appreciate you. So thank you very, very much. God bless. Bye.
Oh, have a lovely evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking for me.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, I've got so many things in the chat.